What's up, everyone? Thralls here once again. I am Necrotic Nick, and I have an album review for you. So I got one that came up in the comments quite a bit, at least on Swamp Beast and possibly on another one. The newest release from Nauseam. And forgive me, I'm going to have to read this because it's a tongue twister of an album title. Imperceptible Impulse. This also came out on the 12th of February on Avant-Garde Music. This is this band's second album, formed in Italy in 2011, technically. From 2002 to 2003, they were known as Chaos, with a K, and then they changed their name in 2003 to Death Heaven. Not to be confused with Death Heaven, which very, very different musically. We're going to get into that. And then changed their name to Ad Nauseam in 2011. Now, when I looked at like the lyrical themes on this, which generally I'm not really interested in lyrical themes, but this one stood out. It said, chaotic, hallucinated introspections. That is a very specific and odd lyrical theme. So I was intrigued. Now, this band is described as technical death metal / avant-garde death metal. And yes, that is pretty accurate, because this is easily, so far this year, the most technical and insane thing I have listened to. And I'm going to have to probably frequent my notes here in order to read these song titles. The opening track, Subspecies Aeternitatis. I think that's how you say it. I'm not really sure. Pretty much not a lot of pretense, and it opens up into a flurry of madness. That is pretty much the feel across this entire album. The guitars are wild. They're doing all sorts of stuff that my pathetic human brain cannot compute. It's just insane sounding. It's all dissonant. I don't know if they're necessarily riffs. I don't know if I would call them riffs. I don't even know if I can call what they're doing scales either, or notes. It's all dissonant. It's all very strange. The song construction is wild. The drum work is somewhere between just flat out insane death metal and like jazz drumming. Loads of off-time fills, weird patterns, strange accents. It's pretty much just like musical madness. And when it came down to comparisons, because I usually like to try to reference bands with different bands, I was really struggling here. The closest I could come is maybe Daughters, if they were a death metal band, or later Gorguts, but I think this even surpasses some of that in terms of the strangeness. Or Ethel Duath, which is very avant-garde and kind of does its own thing, but I think there's more structure to the songs. The first song is just sorts of movements in madness. It's just moving from one point of chaos to the next. And when it came down to like picking up melodies, earworms, hooks, it's very difficult. This is honestly one of the most challenging listens I've ever had. It honestly feels like the soundtrack to a nightmare or a fever dream or a bad acid trip. There are points where it just sounds like it's descending into madness. There's a breakdown, and I'm using the word breakdown loosely because that's the only thing I could really call it, I guess. It essentially just slows down and kind of has this like doom-ish feel, but it keeps speeding back up. As in, you hear like the kick drum, and then the snare, and then the snare starts speeding up into a blast beat, and then into like an odd fill, and then back to that. So time signatures are absolutely nutty on this, and I think the biggest thing on here is probably the atmosphere, which is unsettling. I felt like I was hurling uncontrollably through space into a black hole, or to the awaiting jaws of some giant Cthulhu demon something or other. It's absolutely maddening to try to like put this together. Now, in terms of picking like a favorite track or ones that stand out, it's really difficult because they all kind of have a similar mode to them. There was one that did stand out. It's the longest track. It is Coincidentia Oppositorum, whatever that means. It is the longest song on here, and it actually takes a bit of time to build. There's a lot of dynamics in here. It kind of starts off a little bit more clean, and honestly, when it came down to like the cleaner moments, there were actually some hooks in there. And I mean, they're not your like standard, you know, like big riffy hooks that you hear in most metal. This is not most metal, but amongst all the dissonant melodies, and I don't even know if I could call them harmonies, because it seems as though both guitarists are at war with one another in terms of who can create the craziest thing, and they kind of just layer it into absolute madness. In terms of like a melody on most of this, I was trying to actually follow the bass, but the bass is kind of buried in the mix. The vocals are definitely back in the mix too, but you can hear them audibly, but you're really not focused on that. You're trying to piece together the madness, which was an interesting listen for me. Generally, when I'm listening to an album, I'm looking for like big hooks, banging my head, finding all those wonderful moments like that. This one, I was really just trying to solve this. This is like a Rubik's Cube of an album. You're just trying to figure it out, and once you got one side lined up, you realize the rest is still a fucking mess. So you're like, all right, I'm either going to throw this against the wall or keep working at it. But this song kind of calms down in spots a little bit, because when this album freaks out, it is full tilt boogie, just insanity. There are some cool accented moments, almost kind of like, again, doom-laden feel, but it slowly sort of builds the intensity. Like, it doesn't go absolutely tech nutty, and even when I say tech death, it doesn't feel appropriate. I'm listening to Defeated Sanity right now because I thought that was a close thing to it, and it's not. It's not at all. It's just the closest thing I could find. But I like how this sort of builds to the insanity, and by the time you get to the end, the guitars sound like they're sending out code to Satan or aliens or both. I don't know. But it's really cool to actually hear this song build an insanity rather than just explode into insanity, which is kind of the majority of this. Now, another interesting thing that's on here are strings. I believe one of the guitarists actually plays cello and violin. Either way, there are strings on here, and the title track kind of leads in with that. And it's actually one of the more catchy melodies on here before it explodes into what I would describe as Hate Eternal on mescaline. It's absolutely nuts, but it actually has some really cool dissonant harmonies, and these actually seem to kind of make sense, at least, again, to my feeble human mind, which I don't think this album was designed for. Now, the most interesting part of this song, though, I think is the tail end, where there is kind of a breakdown on there, and you can almost hear where you could insert some, catchy melody, like a big riff moment, but the guitarist pretty much said, "Fuck that, we're going weird." But it's interesting because you can kind of hear melody sort of buried in there, like underneath all the static and squealing guitars. And I think it's predominantly the bass, but it is such an odd feel because, again, you're kind of just searching for something that makes sense. And again, I thought I listened to a lot of technical music. I mean, I kind of do, but this is on some other level. You could literally sync up this album to the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and actually, it could replace those strange choirs and be perfectly maddening. It would actually fit all of that. I don't know if it's going to fit in any other Kubrick films. Probably not, but yeah, this one moment, actually, again, that hurling through space and, being thrown into the void, and it's just insane, panicky, and again, hallucinations and blah, blah, blah. This is what this album is all about. And what a great time to be introspective when you're alone in cold, dead space, because that's kind of what a good chunk of this feels like. Another moment that really stood out to me on this in terms of melodies and such was the tail end of Human Interface to No God. Now, of course, the song opens up batshit crazy. That's kind of the thing here. When they launch and kind of in every possible direction at once. The tail end of this has, again, what I would call a breakdown, possibly, but it kind of leans into like Twin Peaks territory, except, more avant-garde, which, I mean, David Lynch is pretty avant-garde already. But the melody is really interesting, and the drums are doing all sorts of cool stuff here. Like, they slow down to a crawl. The drums on here are fantastic. The drum work is absolutely insane. But on this one, again, slows down to a crawl and starts bringing in these ghost notes. It's definitely more jazzy. And then I guess he brings in the brushes, because you start hearing brushes on the snare, and it kind of works. The guitars are almost polarizing, and it's really weird. Sometimes they really work together, and you have this really cool harmony all of a sudden. And it's weird because that stands out, because that's not the norm on this album, because nothing about this album is normal. But on other times, it's just, let's find the most obscure note or chord to hit at the same time and see if we can not harmonize with the other guitarist. But I don't know, like, it was kind of an interesting moment, and how it just sort of fades out on this moment. It kind of just, disappears. Like, the entire album just slows to a crawl and calms down, because, I mean, it kind of blew its energy all throughout this. This is easily the most insane listen I've had this year. Nothing else has come close. This pushes a lot of boundaries in terms of songwriting, musicality, what is or isn't music. I mean, someone on the outside could really go through this and think of it as just noise and chaos. But, you know, I think if you listen to it more, which I probably will, you're going to actually find some stuff you really like in it. And I was kind of brought back to, you know, stuff that I thought was initially hard to get into that I eventually did get into, like Dillinger Escape Plan or Meshuggah. This is beyond that. But I kind of got that same feel, and I didn't want to quit listening to it at any point. I wanted to keep listening, so that is definitely something. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. And that's mostly for the insane journey that this album took me on. The musicality is insane. These guys are brilliant musicians, and they're definitely on some other wavelength. There may have been drugs involved. I don't know them personally. But this bucks anything in terms of contemporary music I've heard in a while. It is so all over the place. The guitars are uniquely them. I kind of wish the bass was up in the mix just so I could hear a little bit of the bass playing, because it is kind of indistinguishable. The drums are absolutely fantastic. This guy, I mean, finding a pocket, and there's very few pockets, like just like pocket universes of weirdness. Way to go. This is like pretty much distilled chaos. And I don't even know if distilled seems like the right word, because this may be raw chaos. I don't know. I know it's absolutely chaotic, but it's very engaging. And if you're looking for a challenging listen, because believe me, this is going to be a head scratcher, definitely check this album out. It is wild, and I am still trying to figure it out, but I'm going to keep coming back to it, I think, and I may have to actually get a copy of this. I have not checked out any of their other albums. I might have to now, just to see if the insanity carried over from the first one, or that one was a little bit more normal. But I enjoyed this, and I definitely think you guys should check it out. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. Also, don't forget to check out our giveaway. Once we hit 4,500 subs, we are giving away a nice little package of music. Got a vinyl and 3 CDs in there. And we are over the 4,300 mark now, so getting close. And again, thank you. Thank you to everyone who subscribed. Thank you to everyone that's followed us, liked our comments, our videos, said hi to us, all that stuff. We love you guys, and we plan on doing this for as long as we possibly can, because it's a lot of fun, and you guys really kind of help it be fun. So thank you again. And with that, I will catch you later.